Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are
above replacement radio.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Christian. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing well today. The winter meetings have come and passed. The first 3 days were painfully slow. Actually, the first 2 and 3/4 days were really slow. And then Tuesday night, we got a big trade. Wednesday throughout the day, we had the most long-winded reported trade of all time. It was going to happen at 9 a.m., and then it was going to happen at 2 p.m., and then it was going to happen at 5, and it ended up happening at 9:30. But we spent the entire day focusing on the big trade of the winter meetings, and it was certainly reported in a way that was never reported before for any trade. But yeah, we got some moves to talk about today. Not exactly as much as we would hope we have had coming out of the winter meeting, but regardless.
Yeah, as Red Sox fans, it was really full on purgatory, but knowing, you're going below, because, it was like 99% chance that Soto was going to go to the Yankees, but there were all these delays, and I didn't jump to try and, change my emotions about it because I felt like he was going to go the whole time and, prepare for the worst, I guess. And yeah, the worst sort of happened, from a Red Sox fan perspective. But yeah, Juan Soto going to the Yankees. The Yankees also get Trent Grisham in this deal. They traded away Michael King, Drew Thorpe, who is a top 100 prospect, Kyle Higashioka, among others. How many players were in this deal? Like 8, 9 players?
I think it was 7 because it was Soto and Grisham going to New York for Michael King, Drew Thorpe, who was the minor league pitcher of the year. So not just some guy. A guy that is very good, and I think will probably be in the Padres rotation next year. Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito, and Kyle Higashioka was the full trade.
Right. So, Padres get a decent return. Some would say, should have gotten more, but I think that's part of the perks of trading a guy who only has 1 year of control left. And that's what Soto has, and the talks of him extending with whatever team he was gonna play for this year, that was in question majorly. I mean, this is a guy who has rejected $440 million before. Seems like a tough person to negotiate with, or his agent seems like a tough person to negotiate with.
Well, that would be Scott Boras.
And but he is going to be in pinstripes this year. What were your thoughts on the trade?
I mean, as tough as it was to see from a Red Sox fan, it's extremely cool. I mean, Juan Soto and Aaron Judge in the same lineup is, you could probably argue, 2 of the top 3, at least top 5 hitters in Major League Baseball right now. And they're going to be right next to each other in the outfield, right next to each other in the lineup. And, I mean, it is only for 1 year. It doesn't sound like an extension is going to happen. But certainly you never really know. It is extremely, extremely weird that Juan Soto has already been traded twice. Imagine telling that to someone in July of 2022 before he rejected the Nationals extension.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, what the heck? You would assume that he had like a steep drop off, but he hasn't.
Yeah. No, he has a 157 career OPS plus, which is, by the way, in 3,000 career plate appearances, he's actually younger right now than Aaron Judge was when he made his Major League debut.
Yeah.
Which is, just as a reminder, Juan Soto is still extremely young. Like, there are minor leaguers and probably some even top prospects that are younger than him still.
Yeah, exactly. 157 career OPS plus, 153 over his last 2 years, and 160 over his last 3 years, which includes that MVP runner-up campaign. And yeah, he's obviously one of the best hitters in the game. Probably probably a top 5 hitter out there. I think most would say. But you know, there's, I think people love talking about Juan Soto because of how unique he is. You know, he's the, no matter the list you put out for top hitters, he's probably going to be the youngest person in that top hitter list, but he's been in that conversation for a few years now, probably since like 2020 or so, even 2019, you could argue. He's been just in that conversation for so long, yet he's still only, you know, heading into his age 25 season. So there is that thing of like, who knows, he could potentially, you know, get even better here, which is a very scary thing. But yeah, there's a lot of elements to go into with Juan Soto. I think there is, you know, something to be said about he's experienced a lot of defensive regression over the past 2 years, which has, you know, dropped his wins above replacement and, you know, just dropped it's dropped his value a little bit. You know, he didn't have that same defensive regression in that MVP runner-up campaign, but I think that's something that is being considered a little bit when people are when teams are, you know, negotiating with him or negotiating for him. But overall, this does really enhance the Yankees lineup. We talked about their need for an outfield bat. We talked about the fact that even with Aaron Judge, they had the lowest on-base percentage among outfielders last year. Juan Soto is going to change that dramatically. I mean, this is a guy who's pretty much a shoo-in to get a 400 on-base percentage here.
Yeah, I mean, he is a career 421 OBP and over 3,000 plate appearances. You know, I understand the defensive regression is a thing and that his base running has been average to even subpar, but I think it's very easy to lose sight of just how good Juan Soto is offensively, because he's the closest thing we've seen to Ted Williams since Ted Williams. And I understand that, you know, that's been 70 years, right? I mean, it's been even more than that. If you're talking about this stage of his career, it's been 80 years since Ted Williams. But yeah, I mean, a 157 career OPS plus in 3,000 plate appearances before age 25. That is, and yeah, I know it's only for a year that the Yankees have him, but like, you know, you talk about him as if he's been in, you know, as he's about to hit free agency, and like the mind kind of goes, you know, 29, 30 years old. No, he's 25. Like, he could be a rookie at his age, would not be unusual at all. And he's about to hit free agency as a Super 2. He could have hit free agency this year.
Yes. Yes, he very easily could have. You know, he was brought up like, yeah, around like May or June of 2018 when he was brought up. And that whole thing is an interesting thing in itself. But yeah, with with the what have been the talks about, like, what have you seen on like the idea of him possibly getting extended? Like, what percentage chance would you put it at?
I mean, it really sounds like, you know, he wants to see like what teams are gonna put out there. Maybe, I don't know. Like, maybe he's sick of being thrown around and he wants to like finally know where he's gonna spend the rest of his career. It's hard to really know, but I think Passan said today, like, it doesn't sound like he's getting one or that he's gonna want one, because um you know, maybe he wants to see what he can get on the free agent market, because I mean, next year is going to be a very starting pitcher heavy free agent market and less emphasis on position players. So, you know, Juan Soto is going to be the top guy on the free agent market, you know, from a position player standpoint, and far above anyone else. So, um, it's hard to actually predict right now. I wouldn't give it a 0% chance, but I also wouldn't give it like anything above like a 15% chance.
Right. I mean, the Yankees also, you know, I feel like, you know, maybe if the Yankees had less dollars committed and less long-term contracts committed to, they would be a little bit more aggressive in trying to extend him. Not saying that I don't think that they will make efforts to do that, because, you know, they gave up a good haul to get this guy, and I think there was an assumption that they were at least going to try to extend him, you know, once probably spring training comes around. But, you know, they have $40 million a year committed to Aaron Judge already. They have about $30 million a year committed to Giancarlo Stanton, $36 million a year committed to Garrett Cole, $27 a year to Carlos Rodon, and $15 a year to DJ LeMahieu. And that's those are all contracts that are going to go on through at least 2026 for the next 3 years. So the Yankees do already have a good bit on their plate. Wouldn't put it past them to try and extend them, and I would definitely give a round of applause to their front office and ownership if they were able to do that, because there's no shame in spending money on your team. But I definitely understand why ownership might not want to do that with all of the big contracts they already have.
Yeah. No, I mean it's understandable, but you also got to remember that this is a guy that you're getting, starting in his age 26 season. It's not like it's a 30-year-old that you got to worry about being broken by year 4. It's a different, it's very different in that case. But there are also reports saying that the Yankees are still trying to get Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and it sounds like from a lot of reports that I've seen on Twitter that he might surpass $300 million in his contract, and the Yankees are still very much in on that. So, I mean, I don't think the contract is going to going to Steinbrenner away. Like you got to remember that this is a team that just had their worst season in 30 years. Was it still a winning season? Yes, but it's the New York Yankees. The standard is simply different over there. And you know what? They're going out and making the big moves as they should.
Right. And not to delve too deep into like the potential of the Juan Soto free agency, but I think really the last time that we saw someone that young go into the free agent market was the year of Bryce Harper and Manny Machado. And it was a big deal when it happened, but it's probably going to be an even bigger deal with Juan Soto because of how consistent he's been. I remember, Bryce Harper heading into free agency, he didn't have his best year. Manny Machado didn't have the best stint with LA heading into his free agency, but it was still an extremely exciting endeavor with both of those guys going into their age 26 season and into free agency, because it was like, I think we had grown used to the Albert Pujols, Miguel Cabrera, Prince Fielder type contracts where guys are broken, as you said, by like year 3 or 4 of that contract, where instead, you get the free agent, but you also get you get production for the first couple years, but you also he's going to be good for like, the next 5-6 years. And we're seeing that with Manny Machado and Bryce Harper currently. There's still currently a couple of very good players with their respective teams. So I think that free agency, that'll be a fun thing if he does end up going to free agency. But
it would be.
But do we want to talk about the Padres side of the deal?
Yeah. Ultimately, I think I do very much worry about what kind of precedent this is going to set in baseball, because, we finally see a quote unquote small market team, really just say, like forget our market size, we're gonna go for it, right? And they broke over the luxury tax. They had one of the highest payrolls in all of baseball. They had, a ton of money committed to 3 players plus Yu Darvish, 3 position players plus Yu Darvish, and they just asked for a $50 million loan from the city to help pay back some of that payroll. And what they got out of it was a missed playoff run. They missed the playoffs entirely. Juan Soto's gone. And people are going to look back and be like, wow, what a failure. And I very much fear that a lot of small market teams are going to use that to justify never spending, $15 million per year for like 3 years on like a pretty good player, right? Because this is a very extreme example where one team all their chips into the table and failed miserably. And it really ties back to just how sad it was that the Padres didn't finish the way that they did, because it's hard, right? I mean, they put up a like almost plus 100 run differential last year. They just couldn't win the close games. They went like 1-12 in extra innings. They had an awful win-loss record with in one run games last year.
Yeah, they went
and
9-23.
9-23 in 1-run games, and then what was it, 1-12 in extra innings? Was that what it was?
It ended up being 2-12. I think they won another
Two and
extra
12. They
inning
won
game.
another one. Well, they didn't
Yeah.
win an extra inning game until like last week of the season or something close to that. And yeah, I mean, I really do think that that's going to end up having a very negative impact on the league overall.
Yeah, it could end up doing that. I think there's two ways to look at it. There's looking at the Padres and how their buy-in resulted, and looking at the Rangers and how their buy-in resulted. And I think a lot of owners are going to choose, with full consciousness going the Padres way, because it's just easier to say. It's easier to do that. It's easier to say that the Rangers sort of got lucky, which, the Rangers, they did overperform this year, but the Padres dramatically underperformed. So pointing to that, I don't think is logically makes a lot of sense either. But yeah, it is unfortunate. I think if Juan Soto, wasn't a Scott Boras client and wasn't so, stiff in negotiations, I think the Padres maybe would have still kept him around, and maybe extended him. But yeah, he has 1 year left. There's a lot of value in what they can bring back. You could argue that they could have gotten a little bit more back, but still, Michael King proved very valuable in the last month of the season last year. Drew Thorpe, as you mentioned, minor league pitcher of the year last year, had great strikeout numbers and run prevention numbers, a 2.52 ERA last year. So there is that aspect of it, but yeah, it is unfortunate for the Padres. And you kind of look at this roster, and you look at that lineup particularly, and it looks pretty shallow.
It does. Yeah, it is. It is very bleak right now in San Diego, and I mean, it sucks that we're going to remember the 1 year of the Padres' Big Four as with Soto, Machado, Tatis, and both they missed the playoffs. And yeah, though that the roster looks very bleak right now without Soto, even though that is just one guy.
Yeah, because when you have four stars like that and taking out a quarter of them, it impacts the team a good bit. You got Cronenworth coming off a down year. Ha-Sung Kim, wonderful defense, wonderful base running. Kind of an average bat. So in that lineup, it doesn't look as scary. And then you got, according to Fangraphs, with the projected lineup, it's like Luis Campusano, Cal Mitchell, who I think is not on the roster right now.
Non-roster invite, yes.
Matthew Batten and Jose Azocar. Azokar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with the Padres, they're the main pieces of that return. I think what a lot of people would agree on is Michael King and Drew Thorpe. Michael King was normally he was a normal reliever for the Yankees, got hurt in 2022, and then eventually at the end of last year they sort of wanted to make him a starter, which was pretty interesting. And he is 28. He's heading into his age 29 season, and he has 2 more years of control. But in those last 8 starts that he had last year, I believe he had a 2.02 ERA, a 2.41 FIP, and 27% strikeout minus walk rate. And that ERA ranked 7th out of 60 qualifiers in that span. FIP ranked 4th, and strikeout minus walk rate ranked 4th. So, there's major potential with Michael King, and that's, with the Padres rotation being pretty questionable outside of Joe Musgrove and maybe Yu Darvish, I think that it's good for the Padres to just gain another arm. And they also gained another arm in the minor league system as well.
Yeah, so Drew Thorpe is, I think, the biggest piece going to the Padres in this deal. Like I said, minor league pitcher of the year, that was given out by MLB Pipeline, and I believe Baseball America might have given him something as well. His changeup is his best pitch, and it's a 65 overall on the 2080 scale according to MLB.com. And it's a really impressive pitch. It breaks really well. He gets a lot of whiffs on it, and also just generally speaking, last year, 139 in a third innings pitched between high A and double A. Um, and he had 11.8 strikeouts per nine to just 2.5 walks per nine. That is a 4.79 strikeout to walk ratio, and that's kind of that matters in the minor league. Like they can control, and they're doing that. And Drew Thorpe is doing that extremely well. Also, zero point 0.8 home runs per nine, which is below the league average. And also, if you want the stuff that he doesn't always control, a 2.52 ERA and a 0.983 WHIP. So, I mean, genuinely an outstanding year. And by the way, that was his first professional season. He was drafted in the second round of 2022. Didn't appear in the minor league, but he did this year for the first time, and that's what he went on to do. So, I mean, I think Drew Thorpe real deal here. I was very intrigued to see if the Yankees would even be willing to part with him. He doesn't have the biggest name. Like obviously he's not the Padres' #1 prospect because Ethan Salas exists, but MLB Pipeline has him in at number 6 right now. But I think that doesn't really do it justice because I think he could be in that rotation at some point next year, and I think he could be an effective piece of it as well because the Padres need now they need stability in the rotation. That's why they signed Yu Darvish to an extension at the age of 37 because they knew Blake Snell was probably going to be leaving. They didn't realize he'd be winning the Cy Young, but they knew he'd be leaving. Joe Musgrove unfortunately got hurt. But after those three, there just wasn't really a lot of foreseeable future in that rotation, and Drew Thorpe is going to add that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point you make. The fact that they needed future pitching, and they get that with Drew Thorpe, and with the MLB Pipeline ranking of him being number 6 in the Padres system, that's also a mid-year 2023 ranking. That's before he won minor league pitcher of the year. It has some accuracy to it, but I imagine in the preseason 2024 rankings he will be even higher within the Padres system. So makes he'll be a good piece to have for sure. But another piece of the trade, the unsung guy that's going into New York as well, another outfielder, Trent Grisham, who I think he's had an interesting career arc. We were really, really high on him in 2020 and 2021, or at least the first half of 2021. I know I was. There was a certain point in 2021 where, from the start of 2020 till that point, like the only outfielders ahead of him in F4 were like Acuna, Betts, and Soto, I think. But nonetheless, Trent Grisham, he had an offensive downfall, but last year, just peripherally, like underlying numbers wise, he made some improvements. Although his OPS didn't change that much, his expected numbers did, and that's because he was hitting the ball harder. He hit the ball 2 miles per hour harder than he did in 2022. His barrel rate also went up to 12%, and his walk rate was a career high at 13.5%. And that's not with an extreme strikeout rate. It's not a good strikeout rate that he has, but it's not on the extreme side either. Like that strikeout minus walk rate from a hitter's perspective is better than average. Based on MLB averages and whatnot, or it's around average, I should say. And along with that, Trent Grisham also has 7 outs above average as an outfielder, or he did last year, and that's something the Yankees need, especially with Soto going into the outfield, Verdugo going into the outfield. Like, those two aren't known necessarily for their defense. Verdugo's kind of been inconsistent. Juan Soto's taken a defensive downfall, so Trent Grisham will definitely add some much needed defense to the Yankees defense.
Yeah, I mean, being a guy that is a left-handed hitter going into Yankee Stadium with a 28% fly ball rate last year and an exit velocity of 90 degrees, like it feels like there could be some kind of offensive resurgence for Trent Grisham, especially because he's going into his age 27 season. We know that he's capable of being a really good player. He's obviously tremendous defensively, and I think at worst right now he's a defensive replacement for them. And a pinch hitter and like a quality bat off the bench. But at his best, I think he could be an everyday player in this lineup, especially on defense, because, Soto is a tremendous hitter, but his defense is a little bit lacking. Um, you know, Alex Verdugo, who we'll talk about later, also struggles with defense and is kind of a very similar type of hitter to Grisham in some ways. And Aaron Judge, I mean, obviously he's Aaron Judge, and we're going to see him in center field next year. We've seen him in center field before, but never for like a very long period of time, or at least not with the intention of him playing a full season there. So if he ever needs to go back to right, I think Grisham gives him an easy way to do that. So I think this is a very underrated part of the trade, no doubt. I mean, it feels like this package for Soto alone would have gotten the job done, but the Yankees also got, Trent Grisham out of it, which is one of the reasons why I think that like this trade will look very good, not just, for 1 year if Soto leaves.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. He, with Grisham having that walk rate, also he had a 315 on base percentage despite hitting below 200 last year. He'll probably bring up that outfield, or if Soto weren't involved in the trade, he would have still brought up that outfield on base percentage that the Yankees had. I think the Yankees on based at like below 300 in the outfield last year, even with Judge playing there. But yeah, so he definitely adds an element. And do we want to get into the other outfielder that they added in a separate trade?
Yes, let's do that.
The Yankees, before the Soto deal, before it was even sort of a probable situation that they were getting Soto, the Yankees traded for Alex Verdugo. They gave up Greg Weiser, Richard Fitz, and what was the third name of the
Nicholas Judas.
Yeah, Nicholas Judas, who I think was an 8th rounder in the 2023 draft.
He was playing in the Cape Cod League 6 months ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't watch any of his starts, unfortunately, but he was there.
Yeah, yeah. So, nonetheless, the Yankees get another outfielder. Red Sox are, move on from Verdugo. The main piece of the Mookie Betts trade. Obviously, that's a big narrative that people are talking about, rightfully so. But what were your thoughts on the Yankees getting Verdugo?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting. There's some history there with Verdugo and Yankee fans from 2021, but I think as a Red Sox fan, I had I'd say mixed opinions on Alex Verdugo, not even really because of the trade, but every year we would always see the potential in the month of April, and then we would see the same problems start to go wrong, particularly with his batted balls. His ground ball rate last year was actually only 44%, which was his lowest in his career. But he still had some down months throughout the 2023 season where his ground ball rate was north of 50%. But just in the good months, it was well below it. Just looking at it anecdotally, in the month of July, Alex Verdugo had a 55% ground ball rate, and he really struggled that month in particular. He also had a 45% ground ball rate in September, 48% in June as well. So it's kind of just anecdotal at this point, but Alex Verdugo will have the same season where he looks really good in April, and he has his months where he is one of the best hitters in the league, and because he's lifting the ball a lot more, but then he'll start hitting it on the ground a lot more and not be as good. And it's obviously not an exclusive thing to him, but it's something that kept happening. And the Yankees actually don't hit a ton of ground balls, believe it or not. So hopefully they can fix that problem, because he's a very good hitter if he can learn to keep it in the air consistently.
Right. Yeah. 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 He's Verdugo. I think I've had my mixed opinions on him. We were pretty optimistic about him, say 2020 and beginning of 2021, when he seemed to be pretty solid on defense, along with pretty solid on offense. Consistently does put the ball in play, which strikeouts have never been a problem with Alex Verdugo. It's just he doesn't provide that much of a power threat. I don't think he's ever hit more than he's never hit more than 16 home runs, or more than 13 home runs in a season, despite playing some full seasons here. He'll get you some doubles. He had 39 doubles in 2022, 37 this past year, but doesn't really necessarily have the power threat. And obviously, everybody and their mother knows, Yankee Stadium, left-handed hitter. But I think, sometimes that does get overblown a little bit. But nonetheless, he's kind of just made himself like an average player. But he definitely at the time of the trade added to the Yankees. But with the Soto deal happening, that trade doesn't look as impactful.
Yeah, I will say, when Alex Verdugo is doing very well and he has his moments where he is, and when he's on, there's no one that's more fun to watch on the field. Like he is, he plays with a lot of passion, and you can see it when he's doing well. But when it's not going, it's just tough to watch.
Yeah, especially another anecdotal thing is like just going after early count pitches and just not executing at all and just taking a big swing, and it's it's just something that it's just some sort of contact that just isn't going to ever get you a hit. Yeah, it can be rough, but yeah, in great moments, when he comes through in big moments, it's extremely exciting. But I think that's what a lot of Red Sox fans will remember. But you also got to remember the times where he was putting up a 500 OPS up in a month, in a certain month where he was just absolutely struggling. So ups and downs of a Red Sox career. From the Red Sox side of it, like, what were your thoughts on the return?
It was weird because there were reports saying that, that like Verdugo for Gleyber Torres had been discussed previously, and I mean, I don't think that was quite the return they got, but I mean, there are some interesting pieces. Richard Fitz was one of the best pitchers in Double A in 2023. The Red Sox desperately need pitching, especially like pitchers that they can develop. I mean, Craig Breslow and Andrew Bailey are starting their pitching lab in Boston next year, which is I'm sure a lot of Red Sox fans are very excited about, and he'll be a perfect test subject. Greg Weissert has one of the best sliders ever in the league. I mean, his slider averages, I think, like 18 inches of horizontal movement, which is really impressive. Um, and he has some command issues, but I mean, there's potential there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think from a Red Sox perspective, especially considering the holes that the Red Sox have, starting pitching wise, the Red Sox Red Sox fans would have liked someone who could contribute to the 2024 team with a good amount of innings. Greg Weiser, there is some potential there, but all in all, he's a reliever and he pitched 12 innings last year for the Yankees. With Fitz, I think he's a starter down in the minors, but he's in the minors right now. So, it seems like they're still sort of building for the future, when I think a lot of Red Sox fans expected there to be some big 2024 commitments. There still could be. It's still very early, but I think some Red Sox fans were being a little bit discouraged by that.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they traded an everyday bat that they were probably expecting to be in their lineup. I think the Red Sox, I mean, I don't want to say there was a need to trade Alex Verdugo. I mean, I know that he had some moments where he kind of clashed with Alex Cora last year, and that he made a comment saying like, "Well, we only got a few weeks left, and then we're done," or something like that. That didn't that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Um, but I mean, like, yeah, I mean, he really didn't need to stay for this year. I mean, the Red Sox have a lot of outfield options, whether it be Jarren Duran, whether it be Masataka Yoshida, Cedon Rafaela, if he, if he's really ready to take the next step. Wilyer Abreu, Roman Anthony is in the minor leagues. We could see him this year. They could re-sign Adam Duvall. There was not a need for Alex Verdugo to be on this team. So to get something for him before a walk here, I don't hate.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't an absolute necessity. I would like the Red Sox to be a little bit more aggressive in the position player market to get, I'd like another outfield bat, because I don't want to be relying on two guys in their rookie years, taking up a bunch of at bats from the outfield. I love the potential of both Rafaela and Abreu, especially Abreu. Like, Abreu has some really interesting things about him, but I don't want to be as a Red Sox fan, I don't want to be relying on them to take 500 plate appearances
Yeah.
next year when they're in their rookie year. Like, I feel like that's a lot of pressure to put on them. So getting someone like, re-signing Duvall or getting Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who apparently they're really into, that would heighten my spirits about the 2024 Red Sox. But until then, I'd like to see another bat for the Red Sox if they are in fact dishing off Verdugo, because even if Verdugo wasn't the best bat, you knew what to expect from him, sort of, in a way. Like, he was gonna be an average bat, he was gonna give you average defense, and he was gonna be there. He was gonna be able to contribute a little bit. Whereas with a lot of with these rookies, you don't exactly know what you're gonna expect. So they do have to fill in a little bit there. Any more thoughts on the trade here?
I think that's it. It's always weird to see a Red Sox Yankees trade. Like, even though it's, it does, the rivalry, I think, doesn't mean as much as it used to like 20 years ago, but it is just still weird to see every time it does happen on the few occasions where it does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel real. It's gonna be weird seeing him in a Yankees uniform, even though even though it's not weird seeing him out of a Red Sox uniform, it's still sort of weird seeing him in a Yankees uniform. So another deal relating to a former Red Sox player, Eduardo Rodriguez. After 2 years with the Tigers, he opted out of his contract, and he has just signed a 4-year, $80 million deal with, I believe, a 5th-year option. That could eventually value his contract at 5 years and $99 million with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Pretty exciting for the Diamondbacks, a team, obviously just reached the World Series, maybe outperformed expectations a little bit with this rising young core. What did you think about this deal?
Yeah, Eduardo Rodriguez going to the Diamondbacks. That's a Daniel Kern victory lap right there.
Yes.
Because I did have that one. I thought it made sense, and I'm glad that Mike Hazen agrees with me. I think that a lot of backs, something the Diamondbacks could have used in the World Series was another starter that they could depend on. I mean, the idea of doing a bullpen game in Game 4 didn't sit right. I think it was an issue that they needed to address, especially because their bullpen was never that stellar to begin with. And Gallen and Kelly had excellent years last year. And Eduardo Rodriguez, I think, fits right into it. He's a guy that I think will work very well in that ballpark. He's going from one pitcher-friendly ballpark to another, where he looked really good last year for the Tigers. And not only that, but I think this puts a lot less pressure on some of the younger guys that they have, because Brandon Pfaadt is a guy that I think a lot of people, after his postseason, are looking to see if he can take another step forward, and I think it's going to be a lot easier for him to do so, knowing he only has to be a back end of the rotation guy. Ryan Nelson is another guy like that. Dre Jameson, unfortunately, is probably not coming back next year, but I mean, he'll have Erod, in the rotation when he does get back. I think this is a very complete Diamondbacks rotation right now. I think it's one of the most complete rotations we've ever seen from them. Because even in 01, like, there was not a lot behind Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling. It just happened to be 2 Hall of Fame talents. And, maybe this isn't exactly that, but it's 5 guys that, you don't hate to see out there right now. And 3 of them that you really like to see out there with Gallen, Kelly, and Erod.
Right. Yeah. I think literally the only games the Diamondbacks won in the 01 World Series were games started by Johnson and Schilling.
That's actually correct. It was 1, 2, 6, and 7.
Yeah. With Schilling pitching Game 4 and the Diamondbacks blowing it. But shout out to I forget what episode it was, but we did cover the 2001 Diamondbacks at some point in the STBNL/ARR history series. But yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think this really was a necessary move, and a move that we both like here with the Diamondbacks doing it. And I think what this also is a little bit of a sign of commitment to the future of the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think part of the reason why they only had Gallen and Kelly, as those 2 reliable starters, was because I think the organization just wasn't really ready to invest yet fully in that organization or in that team for for playoff runs and whatnot. But now that they've shown that they can get to the playoffs and they can win in the playoffs, there's no reason not to invest in the team. So getting a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez is a move that they can go out and make now. And yeah, I agree that like they needed that number 3 guy. It's going to be vital if they do in fact make it to the playoffs. And yeah, I just don't see it. I just don't see it turning out that bad in the worst case scenario for the Diamondbacks. I think the only thing you have to worry about with Eduardo Rodriguez typically is health. And that's something the Diamondbacks can work on with Eduardo Rodriguez. That's mostly been the only detriment with him. Not that he's an ace necessarily, but you can usually just rely on him to be semi-consistent, except for that one really unlucky year in 2021. But nonetheless, he's fairly reliable, and you just need to make sure that he gets the right amount of innings.
Yeah, no, you absolutely do. Last year was a very strong one for him. Obviously, he did unfortunately miss some time with an injury, but it was, the best he had looked on the mound in a while. A 3.30 ERA, that was the lowest he's ever posted in his career. Obviously, that was outstanding. He for only 26 starts, like that is pretty good. That's probably a pace of like 180 innings if he were to make 33, 32 starts, which is as much as you normally make in a season. His pitching run value is 92nd percentile last year. And it's because all his pitches are just generally very solid. His fastball had a run value of 7. His changeup had a run value of 4. His slider had a run value of 7. So that's a fastball, an off-speed pitch, and a breaking ball that were all very effective for him. So I mean, he's a very complete pitcher. He has a lot of things that work for him. And he has a lot of different types of pitches that work for him. More importantly, so you never really know what's coming with him.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I am gonna do something a little unfair here, but I think this might contextualize the signing a little bit. I'm gonna share my screen.
And you're gonna show his savant circles. Oh, you're gonna do that.
I'm comparing him and Jordan Montgomery, who Jordan Montgomery is probably going to get a longer and bigger contract.
Yes.
And it makes sense because Montgomery has been able to be healthier and been better in the last couple of years. But just comparing Montgomery's 2023 regular season and Eduardo Rodriguez's, the numbers are fairly close.
Yeah.
Montgomery pitched 36 more innings, but looking at ERA,
well, I mean, one of them went 10 and 11. So I mean, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
you tell me with the guy with the losing record is on a winning team is good. Get out of here.
Yeah. But looking at ERA, Eduardo Rodriguez is only behind by 0.1. ERA plus is only behind by 4 points. Strikeout percentage, Eduardo Rodriguez has him. Walk percentage, Jordan Montgomery has the advantage. But all in all, comparing Eduardo Rodriguez's 2023 and Montgomery's 2023, fairly similar, just inning by inning basis. So if you're a Diamondbacks fan wondering what you're getting, like just look at that comparison. Like they're not too far off.
If you noticed that comparison, if you watched on YouTube and saw the stat head side by side, the thing that should have stood out is Eduardo Rodriguez having only 0.6 less BWAR in 30 less innings pitched. Like that's better, inning for inning, batter for batter.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I imagine some of that might have to do with defense, like maybe Rodriguez's defense behind him wasn't as good, because I know BWAR accounts for that.
Yeah, the Tigers infield defense is bad, other than Javier Baez.
Right.
Yep, that's the one.
So yeah, the Eduardo Rodriguez deal, I think it's a lot of positivity from most people. He's also still, like, even though he's been through free agency twice, he's still a younger guy heading into his age 31 season, as a left-handed pitcher. But yeah, anything more on the deal?
I think that's kind of it. I just love seeing a team like having a clear need and going out and addressing it with like a very appropriate, like, market size type guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, the Diamondbacks aren't going to be investing in the Yamamotos, Otanis, Snells, or Nolas of the world, but
Mhm.
they can get a guy like Erod.
Yeah, because like the thing is, like, not everyone can get Yamamoto, but everyone could get Erod.
Yeah,
If any team that wants him could get him. So I'm sure the Diamondbacks probably had to compete with some teams in the negotiation process that were maybe a little above their budget, but they got it done, and I'm happy for them.
yeah, exactly. Good to see the Diamondbacks taking the success of 2023 and building off of it. Instead of just saying, "Oh, we're good enough. We can do this." It's time to keep improving. So, the last deal we have to get into, we've kind of gone in a little bit in ascending order here, or the whatever the opposite of chronological order is, because one of the first things that happened over the past week was Jarred Kelenic being traded from the Mariners to the Braves for Jackson Kowar and another pitcher within the Brave system. What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I really want to go back and find who the other pitchers were, but it is very weird from a Mariners perspective to see how telling it is when an organization is giving up on a 24-year-old who just put up a 109 OPS plus. Um, obviously we expected the Jarred Kelenic era to get off to a much better start. He really, really struggled pretty mightily in 2021. Struggled as well in 2022. Looked promising for some of 2023. Went down with an injury and then just really wasn't the same. So it is a very unfortunate, couple of years that he experienced there. But we talked about this on our last show, but the Mariners just created another hole in their lineup because Jarred Kelenic not being there now means that Cade Marlowe is their 5 hitter and Dominic Canzone is in the lineup. Um, you don't feel good about that, certainly, for a team that was expected to make a run for a championship this year, and it really feels like ownership is trying to slash payroll. I don't know if it's to get, certain guys in free agency or whatever, but, at this point, it kind of just feels like no matter who they add, it's still going to be tough to look at them as a championship contender.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And you know, people can talk all about pitching, but you do need offense to win a championship. Shout out to the Rangers, who just had, I think, the best or the most runs scored out of all American League teams and third most runs scored in baseball. Not the greatest pitching overall, like top to bottom, but they were able to win off of their offense. And I think scored over 6 runs per game in the postseason as well. So, you know, you need that offense to be a championship contender is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, looking at the contributors of the offense for the Mariners last year, yeah, there's a lot of people missing for this next year. Eugenio Suarez, we talked about last week, is gone now. Teoscar Hernandez is on the free agent market. The likelihood of the Mariners signing him, you know, it's as likely as any other team. It's a little bit low. Like you don't know if they're going to be favorites or not. And now Jarred Kelenic is gone. Those are 3 guys who all were above average bats last year and probably showed potential to be even better than that. So, and no effort has been shown so far to change that lineup yet. So all we can do is judge based off of what the team they have now, and the team they have now is very, very incomplete.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, especially with the division that they're in. I mean, two of those teams are expected to compete for championships right now, and to win that division is a gauntlet, and they're only giving themselves less and less chances to do so.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's not like they've added any like 20 any pitching for the 2024 team necessarily, unless I guess Kowar might be an option for that, but nothing really significant. And as for Kelenic, Kelenic showed a lot of promise. He made some drastic improvements from 2022 to 2023. He drastically, sorry to use that word so many times, he dramatically dropped his pop-up rate from 15.5% to 2.1%, increased his line drive rate from 16.5% to 29.8%, and increased his sweet spot percentage a good amount as well, 27.2% to 38.8%. It's about a 12 percentage point difference. And yet, along with that, had a 9.5% barrel rate. And just brought up all of his numbers, both actual numbers and expected numbers. Brought up his average exit velocity to 90.9 miles per hour, which was in the 75th percentile in all of baseball last year. And the kid's, we could call him a kid because he's only 24. He's a year old. Yeah. He's a year older than us over here. So he's already shown some potential, and being only 24 and only having a few pretty sparse years in the MLB, he has tremendous potential for more. This is the guy who he was a top prospect. He was one of the highest draft picks out there. I guess the Mariners have moved on.
So the reason that they moved on was because this is a salary dump trade. Not only did Jarred Kelenic go to the Braves in this deal, but it was Marco Gonzalez and Evan White who also got traded. And the Mariners had signed both of those guys to extensions previously. Marco Gonzalez is actually on the Pirates now. He's owed $12 million next year. Believe it or not, he's actually supposed to be the highest paid player on the Pirates as of right now next year.
That's pretty fun.
Evan White was also signed to an extension, a pretty rough one for the Mariners. He's owed how much over the next? He's owed $15 million over the next 2 years, and then there's a bunch of club options. So they saved about, in terms of dollars over the next couple of years, they saved about like 20-something million dollars. But they had to cut Kelenic at a cost, and what that shows is that they're trying to cut costs at the expense of also a very promising bat that they had, which is just a really tough place to explain to your fans that you're at, especially because Root Sports is like increasing their cable, or Xfinity, which is like the main carrier of Root Sports Pacific Northwest, is increasing their price next year. So Mariner fans are going to have to pay more money to watch a objectively worse team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does seem like a salary dump. A good point you mentioned there. Looking at their 2024 projected payroll, Baseball Reference has it at 108.7. The Fangraphs has it at 117. Both are in like the low 100s. Both would probably put the Mariners like definitely bottom half, maybe even bottom 10 of the league. So, maybe, who knows? Maybe it is a salary dump so that they can get pieces in free agency. But there's also the potential that that ownership wants to commit less after the sort of technical failure that was last year. They were supposed to make the playoffs, they didn't. But yeah, it's very unfortunate because this team is a team you can build off of. It's not something to tear down quite yet.
Yeah, no, you're supposed to be in the middle of a window. Like, this is not where you start. It almost feels like they're rebuilding. Like, I don't think that's exactly what they're doing. Like, they're going to go into spring training next year, and Service is going to say that he's expecting to make the playoffs. Dipoto is going to say that he's expecting to make the playoffs. And I think it's probably more of a John Stanton thing than anything that all these guys are going. But this is just not. It just doesn't feel like a team that's trying to compete. But that's objectively what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. We'll fully be able to judge this after the offseason is over, and we'll see what they do in free agency, because there are some solid outfield bats out there that they can get, solid just general bats that they can get. I think you had like two or three bats going to the Mariners. I had 3 bats going to the Mariners. So there's, we think they're going to do something, but all in all, based on these trends, it looks like that might not be the case. So we'll see about it. We'll be able to fully judge once the offseason is over. But so far, that lineup is looking rough.
Yeah. Yeah, we could talk about this from the Braves perspective, by the way. I think it's, I think Jarred Kelenic is obviously a very fun guy for them to get. It's, we're getting a 24-year-old that has a very high ceiling and a very low floor. The two are very, very much separated. And they've obviously offense last year, and Kelenic's a guy that I think really could feed off that.
Yeah, for sure. What's funny is looking at the Braves and looking at the Mariners, like Kelenic would have been, I don't know, maybe the third or fourth best hitter in the Mariners lineup, whereas in the Braves lineup, he's like
Is he
maybe
even going to make the lineup? Yeah.
It's like he's maybe a pinch hitter option, who knows? But which makes this trade even
Yeah,
weirder.
a quick 125 OPS off the bench.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, like who knows? With the Braves, I'm trying to look at their roster resource because they don't have anyone really leaving in free agency either.
Kelenic also does only have one option left, so I mean he kind of effectively goes on DFA watch if he's not doing very well at the start of the season,
Yeah, that's true.
which could end up meaning, which could render this trade sort of meaningless for the Mariners.
Yeah, that could end up happening. But yeah, I mean, just looking at the outfield, it looks like Fangraphs has him filling the left field spot, with obviously Ozuna at DH. And I think it seems like a supplementation with Eddie Rosario leaving the lineup and being out on the free agent market.
Mhm.
That's the left-handed bat that they needed that has now just left. So yeah, they're keeping him. They're keeping a left-handed bat around, and they traded just a couple prospects for it, and are not going to have to pay that much money to keep him around.
Mhm.
Because it is a cheaper option than Eddie Rosario, and could potentially be as or more productive. So yeah, we'll see about it. We'll see about it. Yeah, and anything more before we get into Jim Leyland?
Yeah, let's talk about Jim Leyland. Hall of
Yes.
Famer Jim Leyland. Yeah, the committee met and then voted on Sunday. Jim Leyland got 15 out of the 16 votes. Lou Piniella got 11 out of 16. He missed by one vote, apparently for the second time, which is very sad. Bill White got 10 votes. Everyone else got 5 or less. But Jim Leyland, I think it was pretty easy to say that he had the best chance of any manager on the ballot, and it definitely wasn't a surprise to me that of all people, he was the one to get in.
Yeah, just taking out resumes and what each manager accomplished. When you just hear the names of those four managers, like for example, Leland, Piniella, Davey Johnson was another one of them, and Cito Gaston. When you hear those four names, Jim Leyland definitely pops out the most. You just have more memories of Jim Leyland, like just the legendary stuff, him, smoking heaters in the dugout, stuff like that. Winning the World Baseball Classic and all that, and managing some really good, some really good Tigers teams and Pirates teams, and going back to the legendary moments, cursing out Barry Bonds in spring training, like that moment and all. Like he's definitely a big part of the baseball story, which I understand. The Baseball Hall of Fame, that's part of it, is getting a plaque, is being a part of the story of baseball, and so it makes sense of why he got those 15 votes.
Jim was actually born in Toledo, Ohio, which is about an hour south of Detroit. It's where their AAA affiliate is. I think he's very much recognized for managing the Tigers as well as the Pirates for many years, the Marlins for the year that they won it in '97. He also managed the Rockies, Team USA, and the World Baseball Classic. The thing that's really stood out to me in the week since he got inducted is seeing the way that all of his former players have talked about him. Because it really makes you feel good about the fact that that he got to the Hall of Fame. Like Barry, you mentioned the cursing out Barry Bonds video. If you look at Barry Bonds' Instagram, he had a post, uh, just like pouring his heart out for Jim Leyland and saying how happy he was that he got inducted, especially considering that it's a call that Barry Bonds hasn't gotten, and there's a reason for him to be bitter about it. Whatever. You can tell that no one's happier than him to see his manager go into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's very nice to see. It's very nice to see, like, especially if a manager gets in, like the support from past players and whatnot, and yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely something that makes sense. Something I think that we were both worried about with, like, even just these types of elections is the people could only vote for three on one ballot. So the potential of no one getting in was pretty high. So having someone get in and having that being Jim Leyland is definitely a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said with Bonds, like to have the moment of him cursing him out in that famous spring training video, and obviously a lot of good things happened before and after because they seem to have a very good relationship. Barry seems to be very fond of Jim, and that's just one example. I'm sure there's several others, but I mean that's definitely one that I think stands out to a lot of people. Miguel Cabrera had a post on his Instagram congratulating Jim, and yeah, I mean it's a feel good. Everyone, I think it's one where everyone's just very happy to see him go in. I think the nice thing about these kinds of elections with the managers, executives is like there's no toxic discourse of like, well, this person didn't deserve it and this person deserved it instead. Like there's no numbers to go into it, so like everyone's just like, yeah, you know what, Jim Leyland was a great manager. Like good call there.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. Yeah, anything more before we wrap up the show?
I think that's it.
Yeah, so congratulations to Jim Leyland. And yeah, happy to be talking about some deals here. Maybe not these particular deals because the Yankees improved by a lot, but happy that there is some action going on in this off season. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, check out the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. We got the we got the playlist, we got the shorts. Check out guest interviews. Most recently with Chris Cotillo of Mass Live, Red Sox beat reporter. Also, we had Mike Petriello on, one of the main writers and contributors of Baseball Savant.
Guy who just wrote a great article about Juan Soto going to the Yankees. Check that one out as well on this Savant front page.
Yes, 100%. So check all that out. Also, follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Giant. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran. And once again, make sure to check out that Billy Wagner article on Wagner joining the Cape Cod League Hall of Fame. Daniel was on site to see it. And check out. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time where we will be talking all the happenings of Major League Baseball once again. See you then.
This conversation is over.